5th of March, or May, excuse me, 2022, City of Nashville Planning Board. Could we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Mayor Donchis, Mike Peterson, Scott Leclaire,
Here.
Adam Varley,
Here.
Maggie Harper, here, John Cathy, Dan Hudson,
Here.
Bob Bollinger,
Here.
Larry Hirsch,
Here.
Mark Meehan,
Here.
Ben Clemens.
Okay, so we have enough folks for a quorum, so we're gonna kind of move on with the agenda. First up, we have approval of the minutes. So in your packets, you had a set of minutes. They were minutes for the April 7th, 2022 Planning Board meeting. Anybody have a chance to take a look at them? Want to make a motion? Mr. Meehan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the minutes with the amendment that they be dated April 7th in the heading and in the first paragraph.
Okay, thanks. So we have that amendment, or that, excuse me, that motion to approve those minutes with the date amendment at the, just at the top of the page that Mr. Meehan indicated. Do we have a second on that? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Any abstentions? Okay, so we're good to go there. Next up, communications.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the National Planning Board. The following correspondence arrived after your initial packet mailer was sent out. Case A220037, Derek Thibodeau, Alderman, Ward 8, email dated May 3rd, 2022. Same case, Richard Dowd, Alderman, Ward 2, email dated May 4th, 2022. And John Sokol, Hinckley and Allen attorney representing John Flatley Companies, letter and traffic questions, May 4th, 2022. Then we move on to case A220054, letter from Joe Mandola, street construction engineer, dated April 29th, 2022, engineering comments. And then there was an additional email that followed on May 4th, 2022, from Joe with an additional comment on the engineering. You also have an updated staff report and updated plan sheets for that project. And the final item, A22-0082, Fred Frazier, email dated 5/4/2022, comments on the project. And that would be it.
Okay, thanks. Any reports of committees or liaisons? No? Okay. Okay, next up, I'm going to go ahead and read the procedure of the meeting and hearings. So the procedure of the meetings and hearings are as follows. After each legal notice of each conditional special use permit, site plan, or subdivision plan is read by myself, the board will determine if the application is complete and ready for the board to take jurisdiction. If we do take jurisdiction, the public hearing will begin, at which time the applicant or representative will be given time to present an overview and description of their project. They'll speak to whether or not they agree with the recommended staff stipulations, and the board will then have an opportunity to ask relevant follow-up questions of the applicant or our staff. Next up, I'll ask for testimony from the audience. I'll first ask for anyone wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan to speak. That would be the time to come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and express any concerns or ask any questions you have of the plan. This will be the same for anybody that's on Zoom. We'll unmute you and you can do the same procedure. Next up, I'll ask for testimony from anybody wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The board will then ask any relevant follow-up questions of the applicant. The applicant will then be given a rebuttal period, at which time they'll speak to any of the concerns raised by the public testimony. After this is completed, the public hearing will end. The board will resume a public meeting, at which time we'll deliberate and vote on the application before us. We ask that both sides keep their remarks to the subject at hand and not repeat what's already been said. We want to be fair to everyone and make the best possible decision based on testimony presented and considering all applicable approval criteria established in the National Revised Ordinances for Conditional special use permits, site plans, and subdivision plans. I thank everybody for their interest and courteous attention. If you do have a cell phone, please go ahead and turn it off or put it on vibrate at this time. Okay, thanks. So moving on with the agenda, old business conditional special use permits, there are none. Old business subdivision plans, this is case number A210177. That plan is tabled until May 19th, 2022. Thank you, sir.
I don't know why that's cutting in and out. Sorry.
That's okay. Try this one. Yeah, that seems better. Old business site plans, there are none. New business conditional special use permits, case number A22-0037. This is AFP 105 Corp. owner, ARBI Farms LLC applicant. This is an application and acceptance of proposed conditional use permit to convert 13,000 square feet of function and ballroom space to be used for charitable gaming. This property is located at 11 Tara Boulevard. So first up for the board, is any,
Mr. Chair.
go ahead, Mr. Barley.
Just before you consider that motion, I just wanted to let the board know I'm going to recuse myself from participation in this case, so
Okay, great.
I'll go sit in the audience for this one.
All right, thanks. So for the other board members, has anybody had a chance to take a look at this application and want to make a motion as to whether it's ready for us to take jurisdiction? Mr. Ballinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept jurisdiction over new business, case 822-0037.
All right, so we have that motion by Mr. Ballinger to accept jurisdiction of 822-0037. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Harper. Any further discussion by the board on the jurisdiction? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? That motion passes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name is Andy Perlman, attorney with Prunier and Perlman here in Nashua, here on behalf of RB Farms Limited Liability Company. RB Farms is the name of the applicant, Mr. Chairman, but the clients are really Kurt and Susan Mathias. Kurt and Susan own and operate the Boston Billiards Club on Northeastern Boulevard, and the proposal tonight is to move the charitable gaming portion of that business over to 11 Tara at the soon-to-be reopened Sheridan Hotel. With us tonight are Kurt and Susan. We have a bunch of folks who do want to speak in favor. Also with us tonight is Scott Thornton, our traffic engineer from Finesse and Associates. And if I may, I would have him speak after my presentation. I have Mike Apfelberg on Zoom from the United Way, John Ricazo from Meals on Wheels, St. Joe's Services, and Maurice Warble from the Front Door Agency also want to weigh in to the board tonight. The proposal is to, as I mentioned, to move the charitable gaming piece of Boston Billiards over to 11 Tara. RB Farms Limited Liability Company has a contract to purchase the hotel with the owner. The hotel is about to reopen. Some of you may have noticed there's a lot of renovation. The hotel's about to reopen. I had a tour this morning, and they said May 11th is they're due to reopen, and they have actually weddings set for next weekend. And so what Kurt and Susan want to do is keep the hotel, the exterior exactly the same. We're not proposing any exterior changes, no real engineering to speak of. So everything's the same, except we're proposing just under 13,000 square feet of the ballroom and function space to be converted for charitable gaming. In our packet, in our application, we had the layout of where the proposed charitable gaming is supposed to go. It takes over the main ballroom, 4 function rooms, and the what they call the Ashwood Court, that kind of semicircular open reception area outside the main ballroom. Just a little bit about Boston Billiards. Many of you folks have been there. Kurt and Susan opened Boston Billiards 23 years ago, and the charitable gaming portion started at Boston Billiards 6 years ago. Boston Billiards supports 50 charities in the greater Nashua area, and they expect that to grow with the move to the Tower Boulevard site. They operate 7 days a week, 11:30 in the morning till 1 at night. And again, they expect that the hours will stay the same. They have, on average, about 200 employees. And again, they expect that to grow with the move to Tower Boulevard. They currently have approximately 11,500 square feet of gaming space, comprised of 17 table games, roulette and blackjack. They have 20 poker tables. Likewise, they expect that to grow, not a lot. They're going to go from roughly 11,500 square feet to 13,000 square feet, so that's going to grow a little bit. In addition to the same poker and the table games, historic horse racing is coming to New Hampshire. It's recently approved by the legislature.
Yeah, can you just
Oh,
lean
I'm
towards
sorry.
the mic a little more? Yeah, or you can pull it towards you.
A little bit away from
Yeah.
The historic horse racing was recently approved by the legislature. The Lottery Commission recently approved rules. One site in New Hampshire in Salem has started in on historic horse racing, and that will be a part of the feature of the Tower Boulevard site. And that's the gist of the proposal. The Boston Billiards, the billiards portion will remain open for the foreseeable future. You know, as it goes down the road, it'll be a business decision whether to keep it open, expand it, contract it. But right now, the plan is to keep Boston Billiards, the billiards portion at Northeastern Boulevard, and grow the charitable gaming at 11 Tower. Let me tell you a little bit about the hotel. Kurt and Susan are very good at operating Boston Billiards. They're very good at operating the gaming portion of the charitable gaming portion at Boston Billiards, but they don't have any experience running a hotel. And there are 330 some odd rooms at the hotel. And so they will be bringing in a hotel operator. And if you bear with me one second. They haven't settled on a hotel operator yet. They're under contract with a company called Hotel AVE out of Providence, Rhode Island. They are a consulting company, and on behalf of Kurt and Susan, Hotel AVE is talking to a number of hotel companies, a couple different brands, and so they haven't made a decision on who's going to operate the hotel. It might be the Sheraton, it might be another brand or another flag, as they call it, but that's a decision to be made, you know, relatively soon. Thanks. The hotel operator obviously would run the 330 some odd rooms. They would run the remaining function space. There's a restaurant on site and just everything a hotel operator typically does. And then the Kurt and Susan would continue to operate the charitable gaming. Mr. Chairman, we're here with a conditional use permit application. We believe we meet all the criteria under the conditional use, and I'll go over those in a sec. We have one waiver, a typical waiver requested of the board for not showing existing conditions on abutting properties. We have a very large site. I think most folks are familiar with the area. We didn't see it would add much to the discussion. In addition, we have the amended site plan as part of the approval tonight, and we are requesting approval from the board. We have gone over the staff report. It's one of the shorter staff reports I've read over the years, and we have no issues with the comments. We will be installing the grid smart cameras on the traffic signals at Tara and, no, let me get this right, at Spitbrook Road and Tara and Innovative Way, as Wayne Husband requested, roughly $60,000 cost. We're going to take that on. Right? We have no issue with that request. And likewise, Joe Mandola's comments, we're going to address all those to his satisfaction. We have a conditional use criteria. It was in my application. I could briefly touch on these. The use is allowed in the use matrix. The proposal will comply with all requirements of the zoning ordinance, all ADA requirements, all building codes and everything. We don't see any possible danger to public health and safety. In fact, just the opposite. We're raising a lot of money for charities. 35% of the net of funds coming in through charitable gaming go to charities. It's a great system. The next three items for the conditional use, I'm going to come back to because it talks to abutting property values, compatibility, and traffic. And there were some concerns raised by our neighbor, and I'll come right back to those. We don't have any adverse impact on natural or environmental conditions. And public utilities, the site is fully serviced by all public utilities. Now, we had a letter come in dated yesterday on behalf of a neighbor raising concerns about abutting property values, compatibility, and traffic. And as to traffic, I'll let Scott Thornton, our traffic engineer, speak to that. We did meet with Wayne Husband and Dan Hudson. And saying those names, two names together, it's always tricky. I get it mixed up. But we met, we scoped out the traffic. Vanessa and Associates did their thing. They submitted the traffic impact report. Wayne Husband had no issues with it. And again, we're installing the grid smart cameras. But as to compatibility and the abutting property values, we don't, with all due respect, we don't agree that that's a concern because of where we are today. If you think about where we are today on Northeastern Boulevard, we're surrounded by a mix of all kinds of businesses, including a childcare, a launching pad childcare business that's been there for a long time. We have a residential neighborhood across the street. We have Milliard Bank just recently opened right in front of us. We don't see that we have any issues on Northeastern Boulevard, and in fact, we think the Tara Boulevard is actually a better site for this charitable gaming. We're right on the highway. We got plenty of parking that's used just for this site instead of sharing with other tenants. So there's a lot of pluses. So we see the site as being compatible to the neighborhood. We don't see any possible devaluation of any neighboring property values. So with all due respect, I think the concerns raised from our neighbor are legitimate. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's pretty straightforward. We have no engineering to speak of. We believe we meet the conditional use requirements. I believe there were some emails and support that came in, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Kurt Mathias is here. He can answer any questions or add anything or correct any mistakes I've made. And if not, I can I'd turn over to Scott Thornton.
Okay. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Scott Thornton. I'm with Vanessa and Associates. We prepared the traffic analysis for the project. I have a brief slideshow. I also have paper copies of the 4 slides, if I could hand them out to the
Sure.
board members.
Yep. Thank you. You can just pass them to Dan and you can probably send them around.
As Attorney Perlman mentioned, we prepared the traffic impact report. We met with Wayne Husband and Dan Hudson early in the process in March to scope out the locations for study, and also discussed what locations didn't need to be included. So what were identified were counts of 3 locations that would be required, which would, I'll get to that graphic display of those locations. But we were requested to study the weekday evening time period and the Saturday midday time period. These are typically the highest peak time periods for adjacent street traffic, given the area that the site is located in. We did those counts in March, a couple weeks after we met. And then we made appropriate adjustments to the traffic volumes based on seasonal considerations and also effects due to the COVID pandemic. We've noticed that traffic has started to come back, but it's still hasn't yet returned to pre-pandemic conditions. So we made some adjustments to account for those factors. We also included background development. One project was the hotel, the re-tenanting and reuse of the Sheraton Hotel. We reached out to the Community Planning Department and got information on projects that are proposed by the Flatley companies further up Terra Boulevard and Innovative Way, and there's a few different components that are included in that background traffic condition. We estimated the trips associated with the charitable gaming facility. We used ITE data for that, which we believe is a conservative representation of the trip generation that's likely to be the case at the site. We then distributed those trips out into the road network and the study locations. Did a capacity analysis to identify the impacts of the project. In general, what we found is that on an overall basis, the project would be expected to add delays to the existing intersections between 1 and 4 seconds on an overall basis during the various time periods that were reviewed. 2022 existing, 2022 build, 2027 no build, and 2027 build. And all locations were shown to operate at level of service D or better, which is a fairly good operating level for peak hour conditions. As Attorney Perlman mentioned, the applicant is willing to install some grid-smart traffic cameras at the intersections of Spitbrook Road, Terra Boulevard, and Villa Way, and also at Terra Boulevard and Innovative Way. And what the grid-smart cameras do is they establish a link to back to DPW and the Traffic Operations Center, so they can adjust the traffic signal timing on the fly. There's a video component as well, so they can see the traffic flow and the traffic cues on the approaches, and then they can adjust the traffic timing or signal timing appropriately. So this slide shows the study location map, 3 locations that were reviewed. Again, these are the 2 locations, the 2 signalized locations that I mentioned, Spitbrook Road and Terra, and then Terra and Innovative Way, as well as the site driveway intersection with Terra Boulevard. So then we also developed the trip generation for the project based on ITE data. And one thing about this data is, as I mentioned, we feel it's a conservative representation. It's much higher than other casino data that we've seen, particularly projects such as the Plain Ridge Casino or other sites, which aren't really appropriate to this development. This is a charitable gaming facility. It's not a quote-unquote casino. Some sites, such as the Plain Ridge Casino, actually have a live horse racing component. They're also, I think, 44,000 square feet this is 13,000 square feet. The Encore Casino in Everett is 210,000 square feet. So, you know, so we feel that the ITE data is representative or is conservative and provides a good basis to estimate traffic impacts associated with the site. We did take a 10% internal capture reduction, assuming that some of those trips that are going to the casino would be coming from the hotel patrons. They could just go down 2, 3, 5 floors, whatever it is, to get to the casino. So so we feel that that's a valid adjustment to make. And then we assigned that traffic out onto the study area. We did assume some component of it coming to and from the north on the site. There's a lot of residential units that are up there. To the south, we feel there's some traffic that would come from the west areas of Massachusetts and Nashua. There's a lot of residential development off to the west. But the majority of it is coming from regional highways, so from Spitbrook Road to the east, coming off of the Turnpike, both north and south. And when we add that traffic into the study area locations, you know, and those locations are high-capacity signalized intersections. They've got multiple turning lanes on the approaches, really serves to allow the traffic to flow there as long as it's set up properly to accommodate the demands. What we found, again, the level of service overall remains at D or better. The only location that experiences more than a say 5-second increase or more than a 4-second increase due to the project at the intersections is the site driveway. And if the increase in delay due to our project on our site driveway is, say, 10 seconds, you know, that's on us. That doesn't affect the traffic flow on Terra Boulevard, and those delays are managed on site. They don't affect the adjacent street traffic. So this slide shows the traffic camera installation locations, again, at those two intersections, Terra Boulevard and Innovative Way, and Spitbrook Road with Terra Boulevard and Villa Way. As I mentioned, that allows the DPW to monitor and adjust the traffic flow as needed based on actual real-time video data and video display. And it's likely that with these cameras in operation, hooked back to DPW, that traffic operations would improve from the current condition. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Or I can turn it over to Mr. Paul.
Yeah, did you have any more folks from your group that want to talk before, on the applicant side, before I open for questions from the board, or? Yeah, I'm fine if you want to go through the whole presentation first. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, member of the board, Kurt Mathias, Boston Billiard Club. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Okay. All right, so at this point, I'll open it up to the board. Does anybody from the board have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Bollinger?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just in terms of the traffic study, was there any sort of scoping session with the city predetermining what the analysis would cover? I think you may have alluded to that, but I just want to make sure that whatever requirements were set forth by the city were in fact analyzed.
Yes. Okay. Yes, so we had an initial meeting with Mr. Hudson, Mr. Husband, and Attorney Perlman at DPW in March. I think it was March 15th, maybe? Yeah.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Meehan?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure the timing of this. I'm curious about the VHB letter, and if they had read that letter and have a response to it regarding the traffic study, or should we wait till
I mean, you can certainly, I don't know if they've, if you have read it and you have any comments, or,
Yeah, we got it today.
Okay.
So, there's, and I have read it, there's a few, there's a few comments that I could make about them. I don't know if you had a specific point?
Well, I mean, so the traffic volumes and intersection operational results presented within the traffic study do not follow City of Nashua requirements, New Hampshire Department of Transportation guidelines, or standard engineering practice. Therefore, more information is needed to understand the project's impacts.
So, right, so it's not a New Hampshire DOT study, it's a city study. So New Hampshire DOT has a set of different, or a different set of criteria and analysis conditions than the city does. So we didn't, the city looks at a 5-year horizon, it looks at existing plus build, 5-year horizon, and no build, and 5-year build. New Hampshire DOT has existing condition, opening year condition analysis, opening year build, 10 years plus opening year, and then 10 years plus opening year build condition. They look at a peak month condition. The city doesn't look at a peak month condition. We met with the city traffic engineer. We identified the scope and the time periods that needed to be included, that they were looking for, and we provided that in the traffic study.
okay. Other questions by the board? Mr. Hirsch?
How are you going to handle signage? Is it going to be great signage on the building? Is it going to marquee scale pylon signage, or what are your plans?
Mr. Hirsch, what I said earlier stands. We have no exterior changes, so the signage that's there today, we'll be using those same signs that may have a new name.
Refacing?
Just refacing what's there today. So there's a pylon sign right along the highway. We intend to use that. There's some signage on Spitbrook Road. There's some signage as we come into our site. We're just going to put our name on it.
Thank you.
Did you mention the hours of?
Yes.
I might have missed it. Could you
No,
just
that's
repeat
okay.
it? Yeah.
Again, we're keeping it the same as Boston Billiards, 11:30 in the morning till 1 at night.
Great, thanks. Other questions by the board? Ms. Harper?
I know you had mentioned earlier that the owners had been consulting with some flagship hotel chains. But I was just curious if they had consulted with anyone that had specifically managed a gaming and hotel situation, in regards to security.
Yes, the answer is yes. Hotel AVE is, while they're based out of Providence, their headquarters are in Providence, they have offices all over the country. And they are talking to hotel operators that some of them have the gaming, some of them don't have the gaming. Most of them do. That the charitable gaming will be a component of whatever agreement is reached between Kurt and Susan and the new hotel operator.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions by the board at this time? Okay. All right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would
Sure.
like to introduce Mike Affelberg of the United Way. I think he's there by Zoom, all right, to say his piece with respect to this application.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and open to the public anyway to take comments in favor, so.
Okay.
I'm happy to start. with
Yep,
them.
sure.
Okay, so may I speak?
Yeah, go ahead and make sure you state your name and address for the record, please. Or,
Absolutely. Mike Affelberg. I am president of the United Way of Greater Nashua. We are located at 20 Broad Street in Nashua. And I wanted to speak in favor of this project this evening. I know there are a couple of other speakers as well, so I'll keep my my points brief. I had actually specifically 5 points I wanted to mention. The first is on the general value of charitable gaming. I'm not sure how many people really understand what charitable gaming dollars do in our community or to what extent they bring value to our community. But I will say that over the couple of years that Sue and Kurt have been doing charitable gaming, they've brought in something of the magnitude of $15 million to our community that has gone straight back into the nonprofit sector. The real value of those dollars is not just that it's a lot of money that supports charitable good work, but those dollars are unrestricted dollars. Those are dollars that don't come tied with a lot of strings with them. So they can be used by our charities for virtually any purpose, which is part of their mission. And that's really incredible. In the world of the nonprofit sector, those dollars are very difficult to come by and just extraordinarily valuable. So I wanted to mention that for starters. Second point is Kurt and Sue themselves as owners of this hotel. I suspect many of you have been around Nashua for quite some time, as have I, and we've seen the hotel at Exit 1 go through numerous ownerships. It's gone up, it's gone down, it's been renovated, the name has changed. All through that time, there's been a tremendous instability. My opinion, having worked with Kurt and Sue for years now, is that they're going to bring a level of stability to that hotel which has not existed. And I consider that to be a really valuable business improvement proposition for the city of Nashua in general. I do think having an anchor hotel at Exit 1 is remarkably important. We have a lot of hotels in the community, but having a strong anchor at the bottom of the city is, I think, something which is incredibly valuable. One other point I wanted to mention, actually two. One other point I want to mention, which perhaps folks haven't thought about. There's a new gaming location up at Exit 6 that you might have been to, the Thirsty Moose. And if you think about where they are currently with charitable gaming, they're at Exit 5 with Boston Billiards. I think personally that it's beneficial to both institutions and will net increase dollars to the community by separating these by a couple of more miles. At Exit 1, you'll have a strong business that attracts a lot of Massachusetts dollars into our community. And at Exit 6, you'll still have a strong, strong business, but it will more competitively be able to bring in dollars without having to compete with Boston Billiards. So I think that that's actually good for both businesses. And the last but not least, I just wanted to mention the value of Massachusetts dollars. Anybody who's ever been over to Boston Billiards and just walked around the parking lot, what you see is a lot of license plates that say Massachusetts on them. To me, being a Nashua, New Hampshire guy, I can think of nothing more beautiful than people driving over the border to spend their charitable gaming dollars in our community and not have to take advantage of all the services that in turn provides through our nonprofit sector. So to me, this project is a no-brainer, and I hope you unanimously vote to support it. Thank you very much, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks. At this point, I will, okay, thanks. I'll continue with public comments, so I'll ask for anybody else, if you want to speak in favor, go ahead and step up. Again, state your name and address for the record, and state any comments or questions you might have.
Sure, thank you. I'm John Araquezzo, and I'm the president and CEO of Meals on Wheels of Hillsborough County, and we operate a nutrition center and community dining program on 70 Temple Street in Nashua. And let me just say that we have reaped the benefits of charitable gaming. Last year alone, we were able to receive enough money to supplement 20,000 meals to be served. Without charitable gaming, I don't know where we would be. It's so important to us to maximize the opportunities of charitable gaming because, as Mr. Appleberg has said, we can use that money to our discretion to support our programs and support the people that we serve. So I would just ask that you vote in favor of this, and we will be the beneficiaries. and so will the people we serve. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Go ahead and come on up. Reminder to state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Marie Swerble. I'm the CEO of the Front Door Agency located at 7 Concord Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I am here to enthusiastically ask for your support of this use variance for what I consider still, as a Nashua native, the Sheraton Tower Hotel. The Front Door Agency's mission is to provide a holistic approach to break the cycle of poverty by assisting families and individuals stabilize, transform, and become empowered to ultimately achieve self-sufficiency. We provide housing supports to prevent homelessness. We rapidly rehouse those currently homeless, and we provide a comprehensive transformational housing program for single moms and young children who are working towards graduating from a job skill training or an educational program. Prior to Boston Billiards offering charitable gaming, the Front Door Agency had to hold 3 to 4 fundraising events per year in order to try to meet the needs of those the most vulnerable in our community. This took a significant amount of resources away from our board and staff, as you can imagine. Since 2017, the Front Door Agency, through its partnership with Boston Billiards, has received $248,740, and that's just over the last 5 years. These funds have been critical in our ability to reallocate our scarce resources to where it matters most, particularly over the last 2 years with the COVID-19 pandemic. These unrestricted funds has allowed us to expand our housing stability program in an effort to enhance our service delivery, reduce appointment wait times, and provide critical housing supports. I want to stress that the ownership and management of Boston Billiards is top-notch, professional, and transparent. In all of my dealings with them as CEO of the Front Door Agency and also as a member of the Rotary Club of Nashua, another charity partner, I have been very impressed with their organization, their attention to detail, and their transparency. I am very excited about the prospects of Boston Billiards moving charitable gaming to this location, as it really is an ideal spot. I fondly remember attending my senior prom at this location, and I think it would be great to see it become a vibrant venue once again. Not only will it create more jobs, but it will also increase contributions to our community partner charities that are vital to the overall health and economy of Nashua. So thank you for your time and your consideration and your support.
Thanks. Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the plan? Anybody else on Zoom up there? Not seeing any? Okay. All right. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition or concern to the plan? Come on up and state your name and address for the record, please. And go ahead and state your comments or your questions. Yep. Might have to pull that down a little.
Hi. My name is Kate Sheehan. I live at 17 Indian Fern Drive in Nashua. I've been a resident of Nashua for 35 years, I believe it is, and I live about, I think it's 1.25 miles away from here. I've seen the iterations of the Sheraton Tower. I think it's only been the Sheraton Tower and the Radisson, and now it's going back to the Hilton. I don't think it's been dramatically changing from one thing to another through all these things. I don't think that a city that has 88,000 people needs another 13,000 square feet of casino. 88,000 people don't need that. I know it's very pulling on your heartstrings to see these charities and the money that they would get from this, but it really comes down to what Nashua needs, the residents need, all the residents need, all 88,000 of them. If I did my numbers right, there was 13,000 that's going in there. I think that I heard 11,000 was still going to stay at another location, and then there's also the one that's at the Nashua Mall at Exit 6. That's a lot of square feet for the town of Nashua. Does Nashua want to be known as the place where if you don't like one casino, go to the other? Or if you don't like the second, go to the other? That's not Nashua. Less than 1/2 mile from here, there's the World Academy and a church. And another, I don't know, 1/3 of a mile or 1/2 mile from there is the Bicentennial School. This is a family city. This is a place that loves to do good, loves to help our charities. We do the work. We've got a good reputation for that. But we don't need 13,000 more feet for a casino. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition or concern, or just have a question on the plan? Go ahead and come on up.
John Flatley. I'm the property owner at Gateway Hills.
Can you just pull the mic up closer to you? Yeah, thanks. You can pull it out too if it's easier. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I just want to give you a little background of my involvement with this property, Gateway Hills.
Excuse me, could
yeah.
you give us your name and address for the record?
John Flatley. Okay, I'm from Milton, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
I've been coming to Nashua since I've been 10 years old. The Flatley Company owned the hotel and Nashua Office Park since the 1970s. So we've been here for 50 years. I think if you allow this gaming industry to get into this location, it's exit 1. It's going to become the gaming hotel, the casino hotel, and exit 1 character. I think you're going to be altering the character of this part of the Nashua. And it is well known, I believe, exit 1 is well known for people that work on 495. It's well known for what we've done there the last 30 years. The hotel, the park, the fields that we put in, the pathways. We put in a learn to ski lift for the families. It's very much a family location. And I just came from there, and you see people out running. You see young families out walking down to Press Cafe. And I think you'll be bringing in possibly more crime. But I think this exit 1 will become known as, in the hotel, which will become known as the gaming hotel, the casino hotel. And that's what I'm worried about, that you're going to be changing the whole character. There's 400 acres there. And I think you're going to be short-sighted in granting this to come into this location. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition or concern, or have anyone just have a question of the plan? Go ahead and come on up, and don't forget to state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Jason Plord. I'm the author of the letter that you referenced. Located at 2 Bedford Farms Drive in Bedford, New Hampshire. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Hampshire. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Thornton and the company that he works for. As a reviewer or a local official, we have to put our personal feelings aside, and we have to review the information that's presented in front of us. And so that's what I've done. We had requested through Kevin Walker over at the Flatley Company, he had requested from the city deputy planning manager a copy of the traffic study. The only version of the traffic study that she had was the body of the report without the appendix. So we couldn't review any of the calculations, any of the analyses, any of the factors that went into the traffic study. But based on the information that was presented in the traffic study, and as you heard in testimony this evening, that the majority of the traffic is going to the interchange, to the Everett Turnpike. And yet the Everett Turnpike, that interchange was not evaluated. the two signalized intersections on Tara Boulevard, the one at Innovative Way, then at Spitbrook Road, and then at Brook Village Road, and then the two state off-ramps. All 5 of those intersections are tied in together into a coordinated traffic signal system. And yet, only 2 of the 5 are evaluated for the impacts. When you have a grid smart camera system, which I think is absolutely amazing, you know, where you can make those changes right from your desk, Dan, I know that they're great, and you have that ability to be able to do that. What happens when you make changes at one of those signals, at those other 3 signals that aren't on Tara Boulevard? That was not evaluated. The reason why I had stated the comments in my review on the traffic study was, number 1, the city's guidelines say that the weekday evening should be counted between 3 and 7 in the afternoon. Traffic counts were only done between 4 and 6. The reason why I was calling out the DOT methodologies and parameters was because the interchange is under the state jurisdiction. There are different methodologies and ways that different states look at different factors. Absolutely right, the state of Massachusetts looks at average month conditions. The state of New Hampshire looks at peak month conditions. The peak month conditions were not evaluated. Why is this all important? This is all important to establish the existing baseline conditions that then you start building all your traffic volumes on top of. If your existing conditions are wrong or off, then all of your future conditions are off. So it's important to make sure that we have established an existing baseline condition. State of New Hampshire looks at peak month conditions. We're all, you know, as you heard this evening, we're still in the pandemic, so traffic volumes certainly are still impacted by the amount of traffic that's on the roadway. The problem is that the methodology that was used in determining the pandemic adjustment factor is not consistent with New Hampshire DOT's preferences on determining the pandemic adjustments. What do I mean by that? Instead of looking at an average daily traffic from the month that the traffic counts were collected versus in 2019 pre-pandemic, they want to look at different factors for the different times of the day. The weekday morning, the weekday afternoon, a Saturday midday. There are different factors that come into play because traffic volumes are different during different times of the day. So that's why I made these comments. Another factor is that we've done a lot of traffic studies in the area. We have traffic counts from 2015 at these same intersections. The traffic volumes all along Innovative Way, coming southbound through the Tara Boulevard signal, and then to Spitbrook Road. The traffic volumes that were used in this analysis are over 300 vehicles per hour less. And that's telling me that a lot of the businesses that are on an Innovative Way are just not fully occupied right now because of the pandemic. But if you add 300, 350 more cars per hour coming down Innovative Way through both of those signals, you're going to show a worse condition than what was established under the baseline conditions. So I'll get into the trip generation in a second, but just off the bat, the existing conditions are just not correct. They need to be reevaluated. And then you can take a look at what's happening in the future. As far as the design conditions, Mr. Thornton was absolutely right. The city has certain criteria, but if you have to go to New Hampshire DOT, which doesn't seem like DOT was even involved with this project, even though the interchange is right there, then a different evaluation is going to have to take place. Now, as far as time periods of the day, casinos aren't open in the morning. They're not generating a lot of traffic in the morning. Maybe they have deliveries, but it's really not going to be impacting the weekday commuting time period. But in the afternoon, Mr. Thornton's company actually did a traffic monitoring study at an existing casino down in Plainville, Massachusetts. And the peak hour in the morning, later in the morning, it was between 11 and 12, 11 a.m. and noon time. Funny enough, that Spitbrook Road in the morning peaks between 11 and 12, but it wasn't evaluated. A casino also peaks between 7 and 8 p.m. based in this information that I'm giving you, the 11 to 12 and the 7 to 8 are all based on Vanessa and Associates traffic monitoring study at the casino in Plainville. So 7 and 8 weren't looked at. Now, going back to one of my first comments about that the city's guidelines say that you should be counting between 3 and 7. and they did 4 to 6. How about 3 to 8? That way you can actually get the peak of what the casino would be experiencing during the weekday evening. So I don't have a problem, a personal problem with a casino. I don't have a problem, it's not under my purview. And I know it's a difficult decision for you folks on the board to be able to separate personal feelings versus pro-development or what it's going to do for the area. I'm solely looking at this from a traffic perspective. And I think that the traffic study needs to be reevaluated because there's a lot of holes in this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition or concern, come on up. Or even if you just have a question, that's fine.
Hi, my name's Alice Gibson, 20 Shady Lane, Nashua. Been living here for 50 years. It is a welcoming city, but I do not, and I live in that area, 03062, where we're looking for 2 pieces of this business. I don't think it's necessary. And the point that was made earlier today by someone, this is a neighborhood with parks and schools and not gaming. And we already have on Northeastern Boulevard. Let them expand that area, buy out somebody else, and use the whole place over there if they want it, and all this money to do this. One place in that zip code is enough. And what else was I going to say? I don't know. It's just not zoned, shouldn't be zoned for that. And not enough residents are here, like myself. I didn't even know about this planning meeting. So a lot of people that my friend has represented that would like to say what I'm saying are not here. This is more business. I'm more residential. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else wishing to speak opposition, concern, or have a question of the plan? Okay. All right, hearing none, I will ask that the applicant, or give the applicant an opportunity to respond to the public testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Again, for the record, Andy Perlman for your applicant. Just 2 comments. First, with respect to Ms. Shaheen's initial comment, I just want to clear to everyone that we're not adding 13,000 square feet of gaming to the city. We're moving roughly we're moving charitable gaming space from Northeastern Boulevard to Tower Boulevard. So it's roughly 1,500 additional square feet, but it's not as if we're doubling the amount of gaming space, and just so everyone's clear on that point. As to traffic, just 2 comments as to traffic. First, you have to please understand that in the 6 years of the charitable gaming at Boston Billiards, along with all their other tenants, I think there are 4 or 5 other tenants in that building, one of which is a gym, which is really busy. They haven't had any traffic issues with the left turn movement onto Northeastern Boulevard or into the site. The city hasn't flagged Kurt or Susan, hey, you have an issue here. It's been working. So we don't see why it wouldn't work on Tower Boulevard. And there's no signal at Northeastern Boulevard. There is control signals at Innovative Way and Tower Boulevard. Secondly, we started the traffic process with a sit-down meeting March 15th with Wayne and Dan. We scoped out, we talked for about an hour. We scoped out exactly what they wanted. We talked about, at that very first meeting, we talked about the grid smart cameras. And then Vanessa and Associates, they did their thing. They come back with a traffic report. And with an email from Wayne Husband, April 19th, we have Wayne to Scott, we have reviewed the traffic impact study prepared by Vanessa Associates. I take that back. It's Wayne to Scott McPhee. We have reviewed the traffic impact study prepared by Vanessa Associates. We did not find any issues with it. The installation of the overhead cameras for detection should mitigate the proposed traffic impacts expected from the new development at 11 Tower. the city wanted more, if the city didn't like it, we would have done more. We would have done what we had to do to satisfy the concerns. We don't have an issue with the engineering department. Thank you.
Okay. At this point,
I'll answer questions.
Oh, yeah, I'll open up to the board. Does the board have any questions for the applicant in this rebuttal period or the staff while we're in the hearing? I'll start with Mr. Means. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am curious your response to what I think is a very interesting point, that the interchanges that come off of the turnpike are under state jurisdiction, and then you have them adjoining that are city. And why weren't the ones that are state? Was that a decision that was made? Was that just part of the process? They seem quite close. They certainly would appear to tie into the system.
I mean, Dan, you can speak to that maybe first because for the city rep. Yeah.
Sure. As the city, we we looked at this area. We recognize that a lot of things have changed due to COVID. Traffic volumes are down. I think the jury's out on whether they're ever going to return to what they were. A lot of people have gone to working remote and are never going back to working in an office. So I don't know as we could pinpoint exactly what the conditions were. I don't think it's likely appropriate to go back and, throw pre-COVID numbers and throw everything on top of that, keep building to the point that you have something that's so conservative that it's perhaps absurd. But we were, met and we were reviewing things in the interest of the city. Clearly, things need to operate. There's so much volume at those interchanges that as you move further and further away from a site, the impacts diminish. We didn't anticipate that it would have much impact on the interchange, just given the volumes of traffic that are there. Having said that, we were speaking from our perspective. We didn't tell anybody to not go talk to DOT to see what they might be interested in or anything like that. So, those points are taken from VHB's memo, which I just received tonight and haven't had an opportunity to fully review. And certainly, Senior Traffic Engineer Wayne Husband hasn't either. It doesn't seem, it seems like this was an existing use. So I had some level of traffic generation previously. Clearly, there will be an impact. It is a facility relocating, so as was stated, a lot of the traffic is already in the city. We kind of viewed that, and given COVID and all that, like I said, we don't have great information, especially at these locations. We have counts from 2015. I appreciate that John Flatley Company has hired VHB, and they've done a few analysis over the years, but we've had a continuing discussion with them about traffic volumes and how their site has or hasn't built out to what was projected, and and what the conditions actually are and that sort of thing. Wayne and I's view was that putting these grid smarts up would allow continuous counting at these locations for the foreseeable future, and then we would have a much better idea of exactly what's going on. Any snapshot in time is just that, it's a snapshot in time, and you can make adjustments one way or the other, but the adjustments that we're talking about, we've seen COVID adjustments that probably exceed some of that. So that was kind of our thought, and trying to come up with, some mitigation and something that we can utilize as information, build on in the future. But I don't, I think it would be appropriate for the applicant to reach out to DOT just to get their assessment of what they feel about the interchanges. They might have a different view than us. And it probably would also behoove us to have more time to review the rebuttal by VHB and consider it.
Okay. Other questions, Mr. Meehan? Yeah.
If I could,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
I don't know.
Just a couple of months ago, I think it was, we looked at another project that was going on in the same space.
Yeah.
And traffic wasn't an issue, as I recall, with the additional units that were being built. How do you add all this up? We haven't, they're stacking up projects now in that one space.
Yeah, that's been the continuing frustration, confusion, honestly. I mean, we had one proposal and they were referencing traffic, credit for traffic that was previously approved, and I don't think it turns out it was previously approved. So it's been hard to, analyze, summarize traffic at this location. That's why we feel these grid smarts would be beneficial, so that we can collect that data, like I said, on a continuing basis. But yeah, it has been difficult. Previously, we've heard testimony about conditions as such that really this next thing is not gonna impact traffic, not this thing in particular, but other things. It's not gonna impact traffic to the point that we have to do more studies to do this improvement or that sort of thing. And so we're trying to get to the point that we have good data to rely on. And, these updated counts are great. Previously, we had 2015. Now we have something more recent. But then, things have changed, and we just don't know exactly what that means for the future.
Thank you.
Other questions by the board? Mr. Bollinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, just two quick questions for Mr. Hudson. I just wanted to confirm that the signal at Tara Boulevard at Innovative Way is in fact under city jurisdiction. That's not a privately owned signal. It looks like Tara Boulevard is actually tagged as a public way, at least according to our GIS. So.
Yeah, I would defer to the senior traffic engineer, but my understanding is, yes, those are under our jurisdiction. We have cooperative agreement with DOT at a couple of the interchange areas where sometimes equipment's theirs, but we manage the timings or vice versa. So, okay. But yeah, I believe those are under our control.
Okay. And just one more quick
Sure,
question.
go ahead. Yep.
Mr. Hudson, just the logistics of the cameras, I think this came up on another project fairly recently. I thought maybe there was a financial contribution, but the Board of Public Works actually had to make the purchase or approve the purchase. I was just wondering if it's the same or similar process here, or if the applicant is actually giving you the equipment. I didn't know what was.
Thanks for asking. No, we did talk about those two methods. It is preferable for us in this case to have them go install these cameras. One less step for us. We don't have to put the money in the fund and then go to Board of Public Works and vote it out. Given that this location is so specific to the proposed location, and they've basically agreed to fully fund them, then they've agreed to go and do the installation. So that's preferable in our perspective.
Okay, no, thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Other questions by the board while we're in the hearing? Okay. All right, I'm hearing no more questions by the board in the hearing. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing and move on to the meeting. Okay. So we have, what in my opinion is a relocation, I guess, of charitable gaming. We've had a couple of these recently, actually, in the board. We've seen a lot of interest from some of the local nonprofits. We've seen some success with it, obviously. We do have some traffic things to talk about here. This particular site, I think we've talked about traffic dozens of times in the last couple of years. I can't help but have to say it's a little bit odd to have the Flatley folks talking about traffic issues at this site, because the last 10 or so proposals that they brought from us don't seem to be that concerned about it. So, maybe that's my own personal opinion, to be honest, but, I personally think the location is pretty good. It seems like a reasonable coexistence with a hotel and a restaurant and things like that. So it's pretty close to the highway. I do drive that road every single day, many times per day, and I haven't waited at that light more than one turn ever. So going down Spitbrook. It's really not busy right now, but I've been doing it for about 20 years. So I'm not, I definitely have personal experience on driving Spitbrook every single day. It's bad as soon as you get on the other side of the highway, by the mall, but as long as you're on the west side, it definitely flows right now. That's not an issue, as far as I'm concerned, but that's my opinion. So I'm definitely very interested to hear others, so. Thoughts, comments? Mr. Meehan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One
Yeah.
comment I was going to make, just because we had several people from that neighborhood speak against, is that we do have a letter from the Alderman of Ward 8 strongly in support of it, saying there is no downside, please approve this. I just thought that would be important for some of the neighborhood abutters would know that that's something we have in front of us as well.
Okay. Oh, this is Mr. Hirsch?
I just think it's a very good project. It'll help anchor the hotel, hopefully make help the hotel become successful, because it's been quite a distressed property over the years. So I'm very, very strongly in favor.
Mr. Meehan?
Mr. Chair, I wonder, I'm kind of stuck a little bit on the traffic.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I should be, because I do agree that we've heard very conflicting testimony about that, back and forth, over the last couple of months even.
Yep.
What do you think about the issue of state jurisdiction over the very close interchanges that come off the turnpike? Is that something that would be of importance that we would table this, or is that something that you feel comfortable with moving forward from?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly had a lot of traffic discussions about this area, and that has not stopped our project's decisions on the other ones in this area at this point. I mean, I definitely have a lot of faith in the city's traffic engineering capabilities. I mean, we have essentially experts at the city, we have experts at the applicant, we have experts, obviously, that some of the abutters have brought. I mean, there's a lot of, in very many of our instances, we're gonna have two experts that say different things. And I think as a board member, you just need to evaluate what you're hearing, and your own personal experience of the area is worthwhile too, and decide if that's necessary. Personally, I don't know that I feel like it's necessary, but that's literally just my opinion, so. I don't know, Mr. Bollinger, you got experience in this field as well, so I'd welcome any comments you might have.
I would sort of echo your comments, Mr. Chair, in that we've encountered this situation fairly recently where we had conflicting testimony from experts. And I would defer to city staff, Mr. Hudson and Mr. Husband. I trust their judgment, given the size and scope of this particular project. I trust their professional opinion, and personally, I feel as though there's enough testimony in front of the board to make a decision without continuance.
Mrs. Harper?
I would just add that, every time we talk about development in this area, that we're always asking ourselves that question, what level are we gonna say, there needs to be additional road improvements or what have you, and I do think that with the installation of this new camera, that might actually help us going forward.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add, Dan, or you?
No, well, yes, I guess. Looking through the items that are mentioned, as I noted, there's a lot of talk about how traffic should be adjusted and different hours that should be counted and all that sort of thing. I think the city's request was pretty much capturing peak conditions on the roadway and trying to evaluate how this would impact during those periods. So I would expect that impacts during other periods would be less, so I'm not compelled to go count traffic in the morning, peak hour, because it's not gonna open till 11, and, the midday peak is probably less than the PM peak here. Although you could do a lot of more data collection and a lot more analysis at the end of the day, in my personal judgment, I don't view that it would, you'd end up at a much different place than what's presented in the study, and it is unfortunate that the appendices weren't provided, or available for review. But, you know, that's just back up to the calculations that are in here. It's unlikely also that there's much in there, that they would take issue with. So, yeah, I mean, although it would have been nice to have the, traffic rebuttal earlier so we would have had time to review it, I'm not left feeling that what's not presented is adequate or what's, you know, suggested in the rebuttal leaves questions in my mind that are of, you know, highly concerning nature that we really should pause. So, yeah, I think I'm, as Mr. Bollinger said, I think there's adequate enough information to make a decision. And, you know, we will collect information over time and learn more and more and refine more and more as things go forward. Yeah, so for all the reasons stated, I think I'm in a place that I feel it's adequate to move forward.
Okay. Anybody else from the board? Yeah? Anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Bollinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve new business project A22-0037, property located at 11 Tara Boulevard, finding that it does meet the requirements outlined in Site Plan NRO, Section 190-146D, subject to 3 stipulations. The first, with respect to a waiver of NRO 190-279EE, shall read, is granted and will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Stipulation numbers 2 and 3 as written in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bollinger. So we have that motion to approve A22-0037 with the stipulations as stated by Mr. Bollinger. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Meehan. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? That motion passes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Having grown up in Nashua, having been to the Tara, I encourage you all to walk in the front door. There's a wow factor. I was there today. It doesn't look anything like the Beefeater costumes from yesteryear. Thank you again.
Yep, I'm just going to take about a 2-minute break here for biocide. Junior Catherine Vassal, owner, application and acceptance of proposed two-lot subdivision. This property is located at 25 Hunt Street. Has anybody from the board had a chance to take a look at this application and want to make a motion as to whether it's ready for us to take jurisdiction? Mr. Ballinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept jurisdiction over new business, project A22-0054, property located at 25 Hunt Street.
All right, so we have that motion to take jurisdiction. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That motion passes. We have jurisdiction. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ethan Beals. I'm a project manager at Hayner Swanson, doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm here representing tonight Bill and Kathy Vassal, who are, believe have joined us electronically tonight, as well as attorney Annie Perlman, who you met previously, but also as the previous case, who is from Prunier and Perlman. The reason I'm here tonight is I'm seeking a subdivision approval for a 1 into 2 lot subdivision at 25 Hunt Street. I will provide a brief project overview, and then we'll be happy to answer any public or board questions. The existing site is located at 25 Hunt Street and is known to the City of Nashua Assessor's Office as Map 102, Lot 30. The site measures approximately 0.23 acres in site and falls within the City of Nashua RB residential zoning district. The site is abutted by Hunt Street to the north and a combination of single-family and duplex residential uses on all other sides. The site has approximately 100 feet of frontage along Hunt Street and currently contains a 1.5-story residential dwelling that's generally located in the northern corner of the property. Access to the site is provided via curb cut onto Hunt Street right along the northern property boundary. A large portion of the existing site, including areas on the south and western side of the existing dwelling, currently exists as grass lawn area. The majority of the subject site contains relatively flat to moderate topography and generally slopes to the rear or on the plans, the westerly property boundary. The soils within this area of the city, as well as this specific site, are mapped as well-drained Windsor urban land complex type soils, and there are no wetlands present on the site. The existing dwelling is currently serviced by public sewer, water by Pennachuck Waterworks, and overhead electric and telecommunication utilities. Moving on to the proposed development. It is proposed to subdivide the existing Lot 30 into 2 new lots. One will remain as new Lot 30, and then proposed Lot 242. New Lot 30 will measure 0.115 acres and contain the existing 1.5-story residential dwelling, keeping 25 Hunt Street as its address. And then the new Lot 242, which will be addressed as 27 Granite Street, and will also measure 0.115 acres in site. And on that lot, it is proposed to construct a 2-story residential dwelling. On the January 11th, 2022 City of Nashua Zoning Board meeting, the Zoning Board granted 4 variances for the proposed subdivision. A minimum lot area variance and a minimum lot width variance were granted for both of the proposed lots. In terms of site improvement, the existing, or what will be proposed is Lot 30, exclusive of minor grading for drainage. Lot 30 will remain largely as is. And then on Lot 242, a new 2-story single-family dwelling will be constructed. The current design right now that we're showing on the plan shows a 2-car garage and a new driveway off of Hunt Street, along with new utility services and site improvements to the general site. As you know on the board, the purpose of kind of the lot grading plan that we're showing is really kind of not conceptual in nature, but it's intended to show the location of the proposed dwelling, and in order to demonstrate that the proposed lot can really support them given the setbacks, topography, availability of utilities, et cetera. The developer obviously can potentially make small changes to the existing building layout, including the exact size, type, location, elevation, garage configuration, utility layouts, and these details are pretty typically finalized at the time of building or foundation permits. In terms of stormwater management, as you guys know, the stormwater design for single-family road frontage subdivisions can be extremely challenging, especially in some of the more urban parts of the city, due to the small lot size, shorter driveways, limited amount of room to incorporate stormwater management practices, et cetera. In this case, however, we are able to improve the existing drainage condition by creating a small low point along the westerly property boundary that will contain 2 leaching catch basins. The goal of this area is to take advantage of the well-drained soils on site by providing storage and recharge capabilities in order to recharge the runoff from the proposed development back into the ground. The proposed stormwater management area, which is the low point with the leaching catch basin 1 and 2 identified in the plan, provides both qualitative and quantitative treatment of stormwater runoff and is able to reduce the peak volumes leaving the site for up to and including the 100-year storm event. We're here tonight requesting 3 waivers that are fairly typical of the Planning Board. Those are detailed in a waiver letter dated March 24th, 2022. Unless the board would like me to read the letter in its entirety, I can briefly summarize the 3 waivers.
Summary is fine, yeah.
Perfect. First, the first waiver is related to the construction of sidewalk along the property frontage, and it's a pretty typical waiver that you see. Hunt Street does not contain any sidewalks in this portion of the road. Our client has offered to make an in lieu of contribution in the amount of $3,200, which is based on a $50 per lineal foot along the property frontage, subtracting the 2 driveway areas, or the 2 driveway widths. The second waiver is related to the existing conditions, survey being performed within 1,000 feet of the site boundary. And finally, the third waiver is to allow overhead electric and telecommunication utilities to service the proposed residential dwelling. As I mentioned earlier, the justification for these 3 waiver requests are described in greater detail in the waiver letter, which I would like to be incorporated into the record by reference here exclusively. In summary, we believe this application is complete and conforms with the subdivision plan regulations. We feel that the property is being redeveloped or developed in a responsible manner and will provide an additional housing at a time when it is very much needed in the city. The conditions outlined in the staff report are acceptable to the applicant at this time. Regarding specifically condition number 5, we did receive engineering department review comments last week. I did have the opportunity earlier on Monday to review the comments with Joe Mandola. I actually have made the required revisions as a result of his comments and have resubmitted to the engineering department, and I'm hopeful that we can work with the engineering department to satisfy their comments to their satisfaction. And like I mentioned, I'm here seeking your approval for the 1 and 2 lot subdivision tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thanks. Just one question I had on the plan was the overhead utility. I mean, have you talked with the electric utility? I mean, you're kind of showing it coming from the pole that's, up the street from the existing lot.
Yep, and so this was
like there's one kind of across that's like a little straighter. So
this was a comment that
Yeah.
Joe had outlined.
Okay.
Really, the intent of where we're showing it right now is really kind of conceptual.
Okay.
That coordination happens with the utility company at the
Right.
time of construction. We wanted to make sure that we were showing something on the plans in order to ask for what's the 3rd waiver, really
Yeah.
to show that the site's being serviced by the overhead electric. So.
Yeah. Are you confident you can get a pole that, isn't crossing over the other lot? With the, 'cause, we're not super fans of running an aerial across some, an adjacent lot to get to another lot, so.
Yeah, no, agreed. It's definitely not an ideal situation for sure. Like I mentioned, that coordination really would happen between whoever our client decides will be the builder or developer of the proposed lot and Eversource, the utility company. Eversource has pretty strict standards when it comes to a lot of different things, and so
Yeah.
it'll really be what they dictate
Right.
is the best way to service the proposed lot.
Okay. And it's all overhead in that area though, right now?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Other questions by the board? Mr. Ballinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two quick items on the plan. I see that there's a shed on the existing Lot 30, which would need to be relocated, it appears. No issues there. But I guess the second thing I wanted to just bring up, it looks like there's some timber edging on existing Lot 30 that also encroaches upon the new property line, and I don't see any note for modification or removal. I didn't know if that was under consideration. Just figured if you're starting from scratch, you might want to take care of all potential obstructions or encroachments.
I don't, you're correct, we don't have a note currently on the plan. It's definitely something I can bring up with our client and look at further. Your point being absolutely valid.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else, questions? Okay. All right. Okay, at this point, I'll open up to the audience. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition or concern with the plan? I don't know if there's anybody on Zoom right now, or, no? You check? At this point, I'll, see anybody, no? Anybody wishing to speak in favor? Okay. Okay. Oh, I have somebody. Is there somebody on Zoom that has a question on the plan? No? Okay, doesn't look like it. Okay. All right, so hearing none, I will go ahead and give the board one more opportunity to ask any questions of the applicant or staff while we're in the hearing. Mr. Ballinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just without harping on it, with respect to the question I asked about the possible encroachment, should that be dealt with? Do we need to add a stipulation citing that all encroachments should be non-encroached anymore? I'm not sure the best way to it appears to be a simple drafting task. However, since you're crossing the property line, I didn't know if it needed to be addressed more formally.
Yeah, if they were to follow that route across that property, they would need an easement, at least, to be able to do that. So that would be something that, but it's a hypothetical now.
Alternatively, the board could include a condition that
Yeah.
prior to signature of the plan, that any structural or other encroachments be removed and evidence be provided to demonstrate that that's been done. That is an alternative as well.
And just to clarify, Matt, you don't think it would be within the scope of the minor drafting corrections because it's actually, there's some level of substance to it?
Yes, I would agree with that comment.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hudson?
Could the condition be removed or addressed via property easement?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions while we're in the hearing? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing and move on to the meeting. Seems like a pretty straightforward subdivision with just a couple of questions. Might want to address the encroachment. Yeah, we could probably just, if someone wants to make a motion and if they happen to be in favor, we can probably add that in.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Barley? Yep.
just one other question for staff, and
Yep.
hopefully I'm looking at the right version of the report, but it looked like there was a date missing for the letter from Joe Mandola.
It's in the new.
There's an update. One right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I am looking at the wrong one.
sorry.
It's in the.
I think they're all
Yep. Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
Sure.
Mr. Ballinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve new business project A22-0054, property located at 25 Hunt Street, finding that it does meet the requirements of NRO Section 190-138G, subject to 8 stipulations. Stipulation 1, with respect to a waiver of Section 190-282B9 regarding physical features, shall read is granted and will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Stipulation number 2, request for a waiver of section 190-221C regarding underground utilities shall read is granted, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Stipulation number 3, requests for waiver of section 190-212A1 regarding sidewalk shall read is granted and will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Stipulations number 4 through 7 as written in the staff report. And Mr. Chair, I'd like to add stipulation number 8 indicating that all physical encroachments onto lot 242, proposed lot 242, be removed or addressed via an easement between the property owners.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bollinger. So we have that motion to approve with the 8 stipulations as stated by Mr. Bollinger. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion by the board? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? That motion passes. All right, thank you very much. Yep. Okay, next up on the agenda, I have case number, it's a new business site plan, case number 822-0082. This is SMC Residences at Riverfront Landing owner. An application and acceptance of proposed one-year extension to the site plan to construct 3 buildings consisting of 177 residential units, a cafe, fitness center, and associated site improvements. This property is located at 4, 5, and 6 Sanders Street. So for the board, has anybody had a chance to take a look at this application? Want to make a motion as to whether it's ready for us to take jurisdiction? Mr. Barley?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that this application is complete and ready for us to accept jurisdiction.
Okay, so we have that motion to take jurisdiction. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Meehan. Any further discussion by the board? Mr. Bollinger?
Mr. Chair, just perhaps a question of clarification.
Mhm.
I think for every extension that I've seen on the board, it's basically 0.0 changes to the plan that was presented previously, and we vote on the time extension. It looks like there have been modifications to the plan set, and I just didn't know if those were substantive enough that we should be considering them with the extension.
You do have the ability to consider, as you say, non-substantive modifications, and that was our opinion as part of an extension, and so we consider these minor modifications. I would say that if the board feels uncomfortable with those modifications, it may choose not to grant the extension ultimately. But we did feel that they were minor enough for the board to consider them together as one item.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, so for the jurisdiction, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? That motion passes. All right, do we have someone from the applicant to present?
Good evening. My name is Brian Patinskis. I'm with McFarland Johnson. I'm working with SMC for this project. And I'm just going to present the changes. I don't think we have to go backwards all the way to square one on this project.
That's fine.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't know if everyone's familiar with this PDF. I believe you've seen this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through the changes. So since the plans were approved last year, all the building footprints have been increased slightly. This resulted in an increase of about 860 square feet of building footprint, and that's across all 3 buildings, so that's total. This caused the most changes behind Building B, which is in the upper right corner of this PDF. So the building gets a few feet wider, so we ended up losing the sidewalk back there. And then we had to go to 45-degree parking behind that building as opposed to 30 degrees. And that was to maintain that 20-foot of access for the fire department that they had requested earlier on. And because we went to 45-degree parking, we ended up losing, I think it was 4 or 5 spots over there. So we had to add more back across the site, which there's some random spots here and there that got added, which you can see there. And then also the parking was laid out underneath the buildings at this point. So they added, I believe, 5 ADA spaces underneath. So we were able to take away 5 from the outside. So you see there's only 2 between all the buildings now. So there were previously 5 in that area, but now there's only those 2. And then the other main update was to the awnings at the entrances of the building. So there are, so at all the entrances, there's a 4x4 awning 8 feet off the ground. So Joe Mandola actually approved it, or we showed it to him and he was okay with it. So I believe SMC wants to enter into an agreement with the city on those because at Building B, they extend into the right-of-way. So I believe there's going to be some kind of agreement that has to happen there. And another thing worth noting is utilities and drainage have not changed at all on this, and Sanders Street and Bridge Street are still exactly the same as they were before, so no changes within the right-of-way. And that's pretty much it. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Anybody from the board have any questions in the applicant? Mr. Hudson?
It's been a while, a year or whatever, so can you kind of go through the status? I know there was a number of agreements that need to be entered into, I believe, and easements and whatnot. I believe those are satisfied or close to being satisfied. But I just would appreciate a refresher on where those stand.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Bob Simons from SMC Management. When the purchase went through, there was an easement for the bus turnout for a future bus stop that was deeded as part of the warranty deed at the purchase. And since then, we've also had a maintenance agreement and snow storage or snow handling agreement. So all of the easements and agreements that were required by the planning board were all recorded and have been sent off to the engineering department.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Other questions by the board for the applicant? Okay. Hearing none, thank you. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition, concern, or in favor? Yeah. Okay, not seeing anybody here. It doesn't look like there's anybody online. So I'll give the board one last opportunity. Any questions for applicant or staff while we're in the hearing? Mr. Varley?
Just a question for staff. The applicant mentioned the awnings and the extension of the into the right-of-way, and I see that there's a condition to satisfy the comments in the April 22nd letter from Joe Mandola, which asks the question about, is there an agreement in place? So I just want to clarify that staff believes that condition is sufficient to satisfy any determination the city makes that such an agreement would be required.
The answer is yes for two reasons. One, I think it's accurately or sufficiently addressed within Joe Mandela's comments, but it's one of these conditions that's inherent and necessary.
Okay.
They will ultimately have to seek an encumbrance permit or the like. I don't think it's necessary to separately delineate it as its own condition here, and certainly that's backed up by the fact that it is in Mr. Mandola's memorandum as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions by the board for applicant or staff or in the hearing? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing and go into the meeting. So, seems pretty straightforward, a couple small changes based on the size of the development, pretty minor in my opinion as well. Anybody have any comments or discussion? Okay, anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Barrett?
Yes, if you just give me a moment here. So, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve new business project A22-0082 site plan. And that motion would be with the finding that the plan does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO section 19-146D and section 190-23F. And that motion for approval will include the two stipulations as written in the staff report.
Okay, so we have that motion to approve A22-0082 by Mr. Varley, the stipulations as stated. Do we have any second on it? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion by the board? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? That motion passes. Okay, thanks. Okay, next up on the agenda is other business, the review of tentative agenda. Anybody had a chance to take a look at the tentative agenda? I think it's reasonably long. It's from the technical review meeting of May 9th. Mr. Ballinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd like to make a motion indicating that there are no projects of regional impact associated with the technical review meeting on May 9th.
Okay. So we have that motion by Mr. Ballinger. There are no proposals of regional impact on the tentative agenda. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Ms. Harper. Any further discussion by the board? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, that motion passes. Next up, we have the referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed R-22-023. This is relative to the adoption of the National Arts and Cultural Plan. Does somebody want to speak on that or present? Come on up.
Mr. Chair, as you know, the Alderwoman Clay will be on her way up in just a moment to support the plan. So if you'd like her to speak first, the board could take the agenda out of order if you prefer that.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, I was supposed to text her, and I did a poor job doing that, so.
Okay.
If you might be willing to entertain taking the agenda slightly out of order, that might.
Yeah, I can take number
Thank
3,
you.
the referral from Board of Aldermen on proposed O-22-011, amending the zoning map by rezoning land situated north and south of Lake Street and west of Pine Street from local business to local business with mixed-use overlay. So do we want to take that one first? I'll go ahead. They'll go quick. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board.
Yep.
My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua, and I'm here representing the owners of the property of which this proposed zoning change is all about. That's the Lake Street Garage, Inc. Those of you who have lived in the city for a while know where the Lake Street Garage is, the corner of Lake and Pine. I'm also here representing the applicant in this rezoning, and that is CPC Investments, and they've done a lot of multifamily housing in the city, and Kevin Corborough is here this evening with me. The parcels of the property which are the subject of the rezoning are somewhat unique. As you all know, it's an unusual corner. You've looked at the plan, hopefully, that's been submitted. Currently, there is a garage which has been there for a long time, as long as I've been in this city anyway, and it's on a sort of a triangular-shaped lot with the railroad tracks behind it, and the proposal is to take that parcel, remove the building, take the vacant lot across the street, and add the railroad tracks to it, and make it one single development. It is currently zoned LB, sort of a vestige, if you will, from that being a local business forever. Surrounding it, as you can see, all RC multifamily zoning and multifamily use. If you've had a chance to drive by there, you'll notice that a great deal of multifamily in the area. Sort of across Pine Street, if you will, to the east, you're going to get into the mill building, which has commercial uses, and again, sort of westerly of this site, you can see the blue portion. There's some commercial uses. That's the Corville Nursing Home. So the proposal was originally, how do we get residential uses on this site rather than use it for continuing as an LB use? My clients, the Lake Street Garage, who I've used over the years, no longer wanted to operate a garage there. We originally approached the city about what could be there, and the city thought it would be a good idea to put residential use and also use that, use a change in use to sort of clean up the corner, if you will. Currently, there's very poor visibility if you're coming from Pine Street headed southerly. Fire department has a hard time peeking around the corner, and so this would be one opportunity to take care of that. However, the process became a little bit convoluted. Multiple variances would be required, not only use variances, but setback requirement variances, density variances, height variances, et cetera. So it was recommended to us by the city staff that we pursue a rezoning
This is somewhat similar to what occurred out on Amherst Street a number of years back when PI and AI zones became overlay zones. As you all know, there's the main overlay zone is the downtown mixed-use overlay, where you get to review the process and decide what's an appropriate plan for the lots in the downtown area in accordance with the master plan and in accordance with what's around it. And the same thing now applies out there on the PI and AI zones, and this would be the first of the LB zone going that same direction. Essentially, we're proposing an ordinance change which would put whatever development occurs on that site before this board and this board only. Not to go to the zoning board, which has more criteria of law, but to come here where the planning would occur. So in a nutshell, that's really what this zoning ordinance is for, is to get proposed housing development before this board without having to go to the zoning board. And we know, of course, as you know, you're making a recommendation one way or another. It's going to be in front of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, I believe, in a few weeks, where there'll be a public hearing, and then it will go to the full board for their vote. As I say, the staff was the impetus behind us making this move and coming before you. Happy to answer any questions. Obviously, the final details of what might go on that site will be before you. We've given some preliminary information with the packet so you can see what we're trying to do. It would be within the height limitations of RC area, and the density is going to be up to you. The final details of site design would be up to you. We did not do a combined site plan with a rezone, which is one of the options under the city ordinance. We prefer just to get it rezoned and then come back to you with a site plan.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks. Anybody have any questions on this referral? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Reminder, our role in these referrals is a recommendation, either a recommendation of positive referral or positive with comments or negative. Anybody, no comments? Anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Meehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to recommend for approval this be 0220-011.
Correct, yep.
Amending the zoning map by rezoning land situated north and south of Lake Street and west of Pine Street from local business LB to local business with mixed-use overlay district.
Okay, so we have that positive recommendation from Mr. Meehan for 022-011. Do we have any second? Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion by the board? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? That motion passes. Thanks. Okay, last up, referral from the Board of Aldermen on proposed R22-023 relative to the adoption of the Nashua Arts and Cultural Plan.
Hi, I'm Alderman Klee. I'm the Ward 3 Alderman, and I live at 9 Maywood Drive, right here in Nashua. Ms. Rinaldi will actually give you a little bit more of an explanation of it. Yep. I am the liaison to the Nashua Arts Commission, and they have created this incredible plan that, in my opinion, works perfectly with the master plan. It's an extension of it as far as the arts and so on are concerned. I brought this forward to the board per the recommendation. One of the things that I want to tell you before Ms. Rinaldi speaks is that I sat in on towards the end of the meetings, and I can tell you that they painstakingly went through the plan. And I don't just mean that they decided, okay, let's put this here and that. They did surveys. They spoke to the public. They got input. They even included in their review of it any of the negative things. And I think they even focused in on that. What was it that they were missing? What was it that someone didn't like about it? So it was very, very thoughtfully done. I kind of made a joke when I spoke to the to previous boards on this. They even painstakingly looked at the physicalness of the plan and how was it readable? How would people understand? What was the most important And they did this based on the surveys and information and so on. I'm not going to sit here and try to explain the plan to you, but I will let Ms. Rinaldi speak, and thank you for hearing me out.
Great, thanks.
Hi, folks. My name is Lindsey Rinaldi. I live at 37 June Street in Lowell, but I grew up here in Nashua, and I'm a graduate of Nashua Schools, and I am currently the executive director of the Nashua Community Music School, as well as being the chair of the Nashua Arts Commission. I am super excited to share this plan with everyone and anyone who will listen to it. Nashua is my hometown. It's where I grew up, and I feel really privileged to be a leader in the planning process for the arts and culture in Nashua over the course of the next 5 years. The Nashua Arts Commission is a mayoral-appointed commission of 13 members, and a committee of those members led the charge in creating this arts and culture plan in collaboration, as Trish, Alderman Klee, sure. As Alderman Klee mentioned, in collaboration with surveys and public hearings, in order to put together the best plan forward that would not only be a reflection of what the arts community feels that they need in Nashua, but a true extension and working partnership with the Imagine Nashua plan, which I'm sure you're aware is the long-range strategic plan, with arts and culture being a really main pillar of it. So although this plan has a lot of high-level arts details in it, we kind of look at it as the Imagine Nashua plan. The arts section is the highest level, and we are what's going to hopefully happen and be put in motion in the next 5 years. So it is a direct continuation of the plan that has already, the overall strategic plan that's already been adopted, with just some more specific ideas that have been cultivated over the course of a almost 2-year strategic planning period, run by the Nashua Arts Commission. My understanding is that you have the document already. Yep. Would you be interested in me walking you through any elements of it, or would you like me to simply answer questions that you may have about specifics?
Questions? Yeah, go ahead, Alderwoman Klee. Yeah.
One of the things, as she walks you through, that I really want you to focus in on is that they set goals. And with each of the goals, they set whether they were long-term, short-term, or mid-term, so that it made things reasonable. It gave you the idea of how, over this 5 years, they would bring this plan forward to life. So I think that's a really important element that we bring out, that they didn't just put out goals and say, hey, let's do it. They set, maybe some people might think it was squishy, but they set goal terms, whether it was a long-term, short-term, or mid-term. So thank you for allowing that.
Thanks. Okay, I think we have some questions, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Meehan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, great plan and really exciting. We were talking earlier just about how now we're getting perhaps to something that is post-ish COVID. Hopefully this can really reinvigorate.
Let's light it up,
And,
right?
Yeah. I was curious about Article 2, page 6, and you talk about improvements for Greeley Park Band Shell and also renovations on 14 Court Street. How is that carried out? Who does it? Is that you guys raising money privately? Is that something that the city is part of?
So the first part of that recommendation is for the Arts Commission to lead the study on how we're going to execute that. Our goal with almost all of the projects that are here are to collaborate with other organizations, including the city, in order to prepare a more detailed plan to execute each one of these recommendations. So the reality is that I don't want to speak to exactly how they're going to be delivered. The goal is to say this is one of the initiatives that we want, and then it's our job to study that and put together the different steps in order to get where we want to be.
Other questions?
That answered my second question, too.
Oh, okay, you got both of them, too. Any other questions by anybody on the board? Mr. Varley?
I suppose this is maybe a question for you, Mr. Chair, as a representative on the Capital Improvements Committee, but is there, I'm just wondering if, given what you just described in terms of sort of the planning phase and presumably some of this ultimately becoming part of that process, is there an element here of somehow connecting those two things, of sort of affirmative actions that would occur under this plan, in the same way that I would assume that you know, the master plan would be sort of considered within the capital improvements committee process?
Yeah, I think there's some coordination. I mean, I'm just looking at some of the pages here, like the action to recommendation A, the Greeley Park stuff. I mean, that did come up in capital improvements and like, I think the Parks Commission.
There are several in
department.
here that
Yeah.
have come up in one form or another in front of
Yeah.
capital improvements.
But it's a good point that probably the plan needs to be distributed through the city departments.
Yeah.
To make sure that they are putting them into the prioritization of, you know, or at least evaluating them for prioritization in the department, budget request, you know, capital requests. So that makes sense to me, yeah.
I would just like to say that at this time, the purpose of this document is not requesting any funding. The purpose is to deliver the vision and the direction that we're looking for the arts. And I think it would behoove us to make sure that we're not asking for money before we're carefully studying exactly what that money may or may not be needed for. Because I do think that there is a great amount of potential to raise money in creative ways. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, right? But I think that it's important that we look at all angles before attaching dollar figures to what's in the plan.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I would
Mr.
just
Sullivan.
say, though, that the exciting piece of this is that several of the recommendations, there's already some motion on them, right? So
Right.
you look at recommendation C under enhancing economic impact relative to the Keefe Center for the Arts. There's already a very public process happening there relative to collecting input, what happens at that property. I think there are several examples of that in here. So it's great to see implementation already happening before the plan has really even formally been through the adoption process, which I think we said of Imagine Nashua, and it's great to say the same of this plan here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Alderman
And we
Queen?
think the arts can do that, can unify us all. So that's part of what we were aiming to do.
As an alderman, I can speak to it just like, much like Imagine Nashua. Imagine Nashua was built by the community giving input as to what they would like to see, how they wanted to imagine Nashua. It didn't mean that every element that's in there is going to be funded, put into a capital project, but it's a goal. It's a place we want to go. And I hear you very often when you're making your deliberations, your decisions. I've heard zoning, I've heard planning say, how does this fit into the master plan? So that's kind of how this is working. It doesn't mean that we're going to start ordinances, we're going to start, you know, expending money to any of these items. It just means it's the plan for the future. One of the problems that's always been with the master plan was that they did it and no one ever thought about how do we implement it? How do you get the prioritization of it? I think this time around, the master plan is a goal. It is something that we're hoping to get done, and I think this fits in perfectly with it. As Director Sullivan has pointed out, we've already started some of these projects, like the Keefe. We're talking about things at Greeley Park. They did not go around saying, okay, what do we need for the Keefe? What do we need for this? This was community input, and this was knowing what the arts community needed as well as the people needed to see and happen. So there's not dollars to this, and I don't know if it would be appropriate, but as things come up, there may be dollars put to it. There may be unique funding situations, you know, partnerships and so on, but I think that's a bridge that we haven't gotten to yet. So thank you.
Thanks. Other questions, comments by the board? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody want to make a motion on this? Again, this is a referral, so it's a recommendation with comments. Mr. Varley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion for a favorable recommendation on proposed R-22-023 relative to the adoption of the Nashua Arts and Cultural Plan.
All right, so we have that motion by Mr. Varley. for positive referral for R-22-023. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Meehan. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? That motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes our agenda. I don't know if you have any discussion items. The only question I had, Matt, was maybe a couple of board members had just asked about the status of the landing. Do you have a very high level where we're at?
Well, I'll tell you my
Yep.
part was in my throat, because I thought you were going to say the land use code update. But, so the landing actually had its first, or the first of what may be multiple hearings on Friday of last week after several delays. That included oral arguments by both Costco on behalf of the city of Nashua as the intervener and BJ's, which is obviously the appellant. No verdict, obviously, no decision reached as part of those hearings. What I can say is that the BJ's opening argument focused really almost exclusively on traffic concerns and the inability of the board to adequately address traffic as part of its review of the application. The arguments that were weakened as part of the BJ's presentation was the argument about the board's use of 19023 being the mixed-use district and the 750-foot separation, which were two of the other critical sort of pieces of their argument. I don't want to get into further detail beyond that, but essentially we think it'll be about 2 to 3 months, perhaps even longer, before a decision is reached. And I don't want to comment on where I think things are headed, but it was generally a really fascinating argument, I think, from both sides. But what I can say, and what I told a few people on our team just today, actually, is that there were a lot of really positive comments about the professionalism of the board in several instances during the conversation, and the professionalism of staff. So I just, you deserve a pat on the back for that alone. There's a reason that this is a very complicated appeal, and that's because both sides really did a good job making their arguments, and you acted, I think, very professionally during all of the deliberations. Several comments were made about the length of the certified record, which is, between 3,000 and 5,000 pages long. So there's a lot of information in there. And so I want to commend you on that work. Regardless of what ultimately happens, it really was a well-done decision-making exercise, but we wait to see what the decision looks like.
Okay, great. Mr. Riley? No?
Do you know, was the argument, was it on a summary judgment motion, or do you know the answer?
This was focused on certified record specifically, and so the answer is no to that, I believe. This was really a record discussion.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any other discussion items? No? Okay. If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Anyone? Ms. Harper?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. We are adjourned at 9:08. Thank you very much.